This discussion is Vincent van Gogh Part 2. We will start with Dr. Gachet by Vincent van Gogh and discuss his next four paintings, Gauguin's Chair, Vincent's Chair, and Wheatfield with Crows, all by Vincent van Gogh.
Okay, we're going to focus particularly on the first three questions. How did the artist's personal experiences influence these artworks? That's always so important for Van Gogh.
Question number 2, what was the artist trying to accomplish with this work? Is this a new idea? And we've already discussed that through Starry Night.
We have, and he basically is trying to accomplish the same thing over and over again, so that's a pretty simple one to discuss. And the third question, what was happening in the artist's life at the time this particular work was created? And we're going to see that's a really useful question for a couple of these paintings here. Let's start with Gachet, though.
Good. Let's start with question number 3. What was happening in the artist's life at the time this work was created?
All right, well, he had just cut off a chunk of his left ear. Theo, needless to say, was really, really concerned. And so, Vincent is down in Arles, Theo is in Paris. He discovers that there is a psychologist not too far from where Vincent is who is a lover of art. And his name is Dr. Gachet. So he thinks this will be a perfect match and hires Dr. Gachet to help take care of his brother.
And so what we see right now is a portrait of Dr. Gachet and his medical herbs that he used to try to help Vincent van Gogh.
And we think that the herbs that you see in the bottom of this painting are a form of digitalis, which is medicinal, but certainly not something probably he should have used to treat Vincent van Gogh. It probably did him more harm than good.
Question number 2, what was the artist trying to accomplish about this work? Well, we discussed through Starry Night. It's not just Vincent van Gogh didn't just create a realistic image that he saw, but an actually impression. He used his feelings to help create the painting.
Right.
So how did Vincent van Gogh feel about Dr. Gachet when we look at this painting?
Well, Vincent seemed to have some insight into Dr. Gachet's personality, and from what we know, anecdotes from history, Gachet himself had his own mental problems. He wasn't a very stable man, wasn't a very happy man, and the portrait you see here is exactly that, a portrait of an unstable, not so happy man. You can tell by looking at the expression on Gachet's face.
And the fact that he's leaning over and he's very heavy on one side of the actual portrait.
Right, and probably most of our students don't realize how unusual it is for any artist to do what Van Gogh's done here. Everything in the painting leans toward the left side of the canvas. Artists only do that if there's an important reason, and in this case there is. It shows how unstable this guy is.
Vincent van Gogh, when Paul Gauguin left, was again very lonely. And we're going to take a look at Paul Gauguin's Chair.
Right. This was after he'd come back from the mental asylum. Generally, his pattern was that he would stay at the mental hospital for a couple weeks. They would feed him regular meals. They'd make him sleep at night. And they'd say, hey, you're better. Go home. He would head home. He'd start painting again, stop eating, stop sleeping.
Start that cycle all over
and then he would be in trouble again. But went back home, and there was a vacuum in his life. Gauguin's not there. So he paints this portrait of Gauguin's empty chair, and it's kind of touching actually, because it tells you, as we've seen before, what he's trying to do is show you how he feels, not just about the chair, but also about Gauguin.
And you could see in the portrait there's a candle that's lit. You also see literature.
Right, and those... Go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say that the literature represents knowledge,
right,
and the candle that's lit represents a brilliance, that the light is on. He's impressed. But if you look at the chair too, I mean, that's really a nice chair.
It is. It's not a cheap chair that you could just go out and buy at the market. It's been carved. There's an elegance to it, and clearly, I mean, what Van Gogh is telling you is that those are his feelings about Gauguin, an elegant, knowledgeable, brilliant man.
And how did he feel about himself?
Not the same thing.
You see right here, Vincent's Chair by Vincent van Gogh. Right here we have a peasant's chair and a pipe and his tobacco. There's no candle.
Right.
There's no literature. The chair itself seems kind of cheap.
It is plain, and it just tells you not only how he feels about the chair, but how he feels about himself, because the chair really represents, his attitude toward himself. He doesn't see himself as the brilliant, knowledgeable, elegant person that Gauguin was.
The final painting that we're going to discuss in this discussion is The Wheat Field with Crows.
Now you're going to have to kind of turn ahead in your class book. We're skipping a number of works of art that we discuss in class and moving to the next one that you just are responsible for on the exam. So turn a couple pages ahead and you'll find this. This is a significant painting because many people, scholars, believe that this is the last painting that Van Gogh did before he took his life.
And why did people feel that way? Well, if you take a look at the portrait, it's extremely chaotic. The brush strokes are very loose. When this actual field doesn't appear this way, does it?
No. And we should say, too, this was the actual canvas that was in his studio on the easel after he died, and that's part of the reason why people think that he was working on it when he took his life, too. But, right, the roads, if you were actually to stand in this field, and you can go to this day, you can go stand in this field and they actually have the portrait up there, as a marker. And what you'll see if you do that is that the roads actually meet in the distance. And Vincent changed it so that the roads all come toward him, toward the viewer. That's called inverted perspective. And it's done very, very rarely by artists because it makes everything in the painting look like it's crashing in on the artist or the viewer. It's almost a kind of a violent, hostile thing to do.
Additionally, you see that the birds are flying away, but they're flying in different directions.
Yeah, it's kind of a chaotic sky, and the brushstrokes in the sky kind of seem to... I mean, you could picture a wind blowing in every direction.
Yeah, it doesn't seem very clear.
And then the cornfield itself is painted so that the corn seems to kind of look like a wave that goes up, and then the top of the corn is like the crest of the wave, and it looks like it's just all about to crash in on the viewer.
Again, that inverted perspective making the viewer feel uncomfortable, or in this case, Vincent Van Gogh himself.
Right. If this was the last painting that he did before he took his life, it makes a lot of sense because it seems to be a portrait or a painting about life crashing in on the artist.
And that concludes discussion number 2 of Vincent Van Gogh.
Humanities Online. That's all, folks.